Today on Mike Attempts, fixing free blowers. Various people have given me broken leaf blowers. Let's try to fix them. We've got a Craftsman B210, a Husqvarna 125B, a Weed Eater Barracuda SV30, and a Troy-Bilt TB2MB. There's also an Echo backpack blower. But it looks like it's been hit by a truck, so I think I'm going to fix that one in a separate video. I'll start with the Craftsman because I think it's going to be the easiest. My mom gave it to me and said it was basically new, but the starter rope broke. These have all been sitting a while, so I'm going to give them a little squirt of penetrating oil. Then pop the spark plug back in to keep crap from falling in the cylinder. I'm not an engineer, but this feels like a really bad design. I had to take apart the entire blower just to get to the starter pulley. I guess it's not a bad design if you want to deter repair in hopes of selling more blowers. There's a retaining ring holding the pulley in place. It has two coil springs, one under the pulley, inside a metal disc, and one inside the pulley. I need to remove the knot, but I don't want to separate the pulley or the spring will rapidly uncoil and make this job a lot harder. I melted the end of the rope, added a few drops of super glue, and twisted it tight with a pair of pliers. Now I have a stiff end to work with. I fished it through these little barrels and into the pulley. I tied a knot and added a couple more drops of super glue to prevent it from coming apart. The pulley needs to be rewound to increase the spring tension. There's a little notch to pull the rope through while tensioning the spring. Line up the slot with the end of the coil and twist the pulley clockwise. Once tensioned, release the rope from the notch and let it slowly wrap itself back onto the pulley. I pop the retaining ring on and began putting it all back together. I cleaned up the spark plug, and the air filter looks good. The spark arrestor is just a screen that stops sparks from exiting the muffler. This is a common maintenance item that they've made difficult to access. Once removed, I was further disappointed that the screen was not removable. Luckily, it's clean. I would usually use a wire brush and some compressed air if it was clogged. Since this one is enclosed, you could burn off the carbon deposits with a small propane torch. Alright, let's see if it works. white smoke is just the penetrating oil burning off. Next, I'm going to tackle the Husqvarna. Looks like another starter rope issue, but this one isn't broken. I gave the cylinder a squirt, removed 4 screws, and we're in. This is a much better design. I'm no pro, but shouldn't there be a spring here? I'm gonna shine this one up a bit and check everything else while I wait for a new starter spring. The air filter is a little discolored, but it seems to be in good condition. This one screw will not come out, but I can see that the spark arrestor screen is clean, so I'm not going to fight it. The new spring has arrived. It's wrapped with a wire to keep it coiled up. I've never installed one of these before, but I know what will happen if I don't do it properly. I tapped the hook into place while keeping it held down and hoped for the best. That surprised me, but it's in. I just have to pull out the retaining wire. I re-greased the shaft for good measure. Line up the slot in the pulley with the end of the spring. Pull the rope into the notch and turn the pulley clockwise to tension. Oh yeah. Now I can test the compression. I held the throttle open and got 110 psi. But will it run? Ooh, Barracuda. I have a feeling this might be the oldest blower in the group. The parts diagram I found online was dated 1995 and the manual was from 2000. It turns over and sounds alright. The air filter is starting to crumble, but let's see what it'll do before throwing any money at it. There's no primer bulb, so I have no way of seeing if fuel is getting to the carb. Nothing. The spark plug is wet, but it's WD-40, not fuel. I attached a wire from the ground strap back to the muffler to check for spark. Yep, it does have spark. Compression is about 102 psi. So it seems to be a fuel issue. Let's crack it open to investigate further. They usually run better when the fuel line is attached. Here's where it should be connected. This is a rubber vibration isolator. There's one on each side. This is the first small engine carburetor I've seen that doesn't have a fuel return line. The diaphragms are very stiff. The inside of the carb looks clean. It's a Walbro WT141A. The fuel line enters at the top of the tank. The old line snaps like uncooked spaghetti. And there's the fuel filter. I marked the new line so the filter would be able to reach the bottom of the tank in both corners. I trimmed the end to a point and lubed it up to assist with entry. Once it was started, I was able to reach in and pull more through with needle nose pliers. I cut the end flush and installed the filter. I was struggling, so I warmed it up a bit. I've got the rebuild kit, so now I can finish the carb. I used carb cleaner to spray out all the passages and gave everything a good scrub. Don't forget your safety glasses. The needle just drops in, and the spring sits in this little cup. The pin slides through the lever, and the ring underneath will retain the spring. Slip the front of the lever under the top of the needle, line up the spring, then adjust the pin left or right until it fits in its slot. This is how the spring should be positioned. Hold everything in place with your thumb while tightening the screw. I picked up this Walbro metering lever gauge, and since the carb model starts with WT, I'll use this side to measure. The middle point should just touch the end of the lever when the two outer points are resting flat on the carb body. This little metal nub moves the lever up and down to open and close the needle. Line everything up and tighten the screws. Be careful not to crease this diaphragm. Make sure it's sitting flush all the way around and install the screw. I rubbed a tiny bit of grease onto the gasket and reinstalled the carb. The wave spring washer goes on the bolt that secures the choke lever. This muffler doesn't have a spark arrestor. I was unable to find a replacement air filter, and this one's falling apart. So I'm going to try to make one. I used a paint marker to mark the holes. This thin-walled scrap tube should be able to make the holes. It works well, but since it's foam, it's hard to be accurate. Since the tube is so thin, I can cut the foam by twisting it. Now I just need to cut out the middle. I cut a slot in a piece of plastic so I could compress the foam while cutting. This is the best idea I could come up with to make straight cuts. Not perfect, but it'll do. I might have to trim the height down, but we'll see. Whoops, forgot to attach the throttle cable. With the tank in place, I cut the fuel line and connected it to the carb. The vibration isolator goes here and slides over this piece. The new filter actually fits fine as is. Let's test it out. It's gonna go. Without a primer bulb, it took some time to get all the air out of the fuel line. Fixed. And finally, the Troy-Bilt. The spark plug threads have a lot of gunk on them. Sounds good. Almost 125 psi. The spark plug looks much better after some cleaning. We've got a broken fuel line. The air filter doesn't look too bad. I was able to brush the dirt off easily. I cleaned up the outside and then started on the fuel lines. This little black piece isn't required. I think it's just there as extra insurance against the line being pulled out. Now for the intake line. This one has to be long enough that the filter can reach the furthest side of the tank. All of the fuel filters have looked good, which is why I've been reusing them. I'm going to cross my fingers that the carburetor is clean and put it all back together for a test run. It fired right up, but it won't idle. Must be the carb. It's easier to push the fuel lines off the posts than to pull them. Oh yeah, there's the problem. Most of this is probably from the deteriorating fuel lines. If the gaskets and diaphragms are in good shape, you can usually reuse them as long as you're careful during disassembly. Even though it ran, this diaphragm is pretty stiff and should be replaced. This has to be the dirtiest carb I've ever seen. I'm surprised it ran at all. The screen is filthy. And it's also dirty underneath. The rebuild kits typically come with these parts, but unless the originals are damaged or worn, I usually only replace the gaskets and diaphragms. I cleaned everything thoroughly. There are a lot of tiny passages. Be sure they're all clear. Watch your eyeballs. This carb is a Zama C1U P27. And here's the rebuild kit. First, I'll install the new screen. I like to use something blunt to gently nudge it into place. The gasket goes on first, followed by the diaphragm. Drop in the needle and spring. Hook the lever onto the needle and tighten the screw. This gauge is for Zama carbs, and since this is a C1U carburetor, you could use any straight edge to check the lever. Looks perfect. The metal ring on the diaphragm faces the lever. Two more screws and rebuild complete. Be sure to reconnect the lines to the proper ports. This is the intake line, which has the fuel filter on the other end. The one closest to the primer is the return line. Line up the exterior gaskets. Tighten the screws. And attach the throttle cable. Well, it idles now, but the trigger response is lagging. This inexpensive carburetor adjustment toolkit should fit any carb. You can also buy them individually if you only need one type. This Troy-Bilt requires a double D adjustment tool. I turned in the high-speed jet until it stopped at 1.5 turns. Then I turned the low-speed jet all the way in, which cut off the fuel to the engine. It seemed way out of adjustment. I started by turning both jets out 1.5 turns. I made a silver mark on the handle so it was easier to count the turns. It didn't start as easy on these settings, and squeezing the trigger causes the engine to bog down. I turned the low-speed jet out another half turn, and now the throttle is responsive. Done! Feel free to rate this video, add your comments and questions below, and subscribe for more.